My name is Mark Laliberte, and my new book is called Brick, Brick, Brick. I think the idea of essentially approaching a book of poetry without using any text was a challenge for me that I wanted to sort of put forth. And the brick seemed like a real great metaphor to attempt that with. One of the starting points for the book was just a real interest in these background scenes in my personal reading of graphic novels and looking at illustrations and things like that. And a lot of times for me, that really can just lead into a new space or a new area to work with. And I just kept noticing these really kind of interesting backgrounds, and at that time I was trying to look a lot at backgrounds for a few different projects. I guess I got fixated on bricks because they're kind of rare in comics actually, and the thing about them that interested me is everybody's hand sort of approaches the brick somehow quite differently. So it's just this singular sort of form, but there's tons of variation. Simple act of asking the viewer to look at text and image in a new light. It's a kind of blurring of art and text. And, there's an entire history there of concrete poetry, visual poetry, that is sort of in place. But I think text is the essential component there. In a way, I'm sort of trying to do a little bit of an inversion by saying, there's no text in my book, but in fact, I see these as poems. It's interesting. I'm well aware that a really simplistic reading of the work would be for someone to interpret it that way. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth. The works are quite constructed. It's very rare that I would find any source material that really acted as a whole. And so I'm using a lot of scattering of small parts, little bits of bricks and backgrounds from different panels or different illustrations from the same source person, and working with that to try to just create a kind of singular statement, doing a lot of actually inhabiting of the line, finding a kind of style to fill in the blanks, and always just to kind of create a final work that for me was both sort of acted as a field but also had something new to say within the context of the book. So a lot of it has to do with sort of texture and mood to a piece. There might be sort of small things happening in front of the walls, and just trying to be really conscious of developing a singular statement that was that could act on its own for each and every piece. With Brick, 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 I was working completely digitally, so when I was scanning things and assembling them, I could size, and I also tried to mimic the artist's hand whenever there were gaps, and so there's a lot of filling in to create those unified fields. When it came to titling these poems, I wanted to employ a titling system that in some way provided the reader with a map back to some of the source material that I started with. And so I actually named each poem after the artist or illustrator that provided me with a starting point. This gesture isn't really about homage. It's not meant to kind of you know, capitalize on that artist's name or anything like that. But it really is just about trying to be honest about the source material, to give the poem the most direct title based on what it's being sourced from. And so what you actually get through the book are really a set of poems that are just have a series of names. If you're invested in the comic book community, those names actually mean something to you. And I think it would be great if a reader actually, you know, like did a little bit of tracking back with the map that's being provided for them. But for me, it's really, it was probably like one of the harder decisions in terms of packaging this book. If I had given the titles completely random names and really kind of separated the reader from that map, it would have felt dishonest. But I think there's a risk that that the wrong reading would be that these are simply you know, clips of or snapshots of another person's work. And in fact, from my perspective, each one of these is a unique work that I authored.